With the recent and seemingly annual discussion surrounding difficulty in gaming, particularly around FromSoft titles, naturally I wanted to throw my hat into the ring. First and foremost, this video isn't designed to take a single side, but rather offer a case for both, as I agree with those who want difficulty options in harder games and those who don't. With that said, personally, I'm a big fan of modular difficulty, giving the player the ability to modify the game's difficulty to suit their own playstyle or situation, as many players may not have as much time as they used to invest in their favorite games. The best example of modular difficulty I can think of is Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous, with difficulty options including reducing enemy critical hit damage, overall enemy aggression, removing control effects on party members, overall damage the party receives, and much more. Rise of the Ronin is another good example and perhaps a more fitting game for this video, as Pathfinder is a story-focused CRPG, while Rise of the Ronin is a Soulsborne from Neo developers Team Ninja. Either way, both games provide players with the option to cater their own personal experience based on skill level. You can also make it more difficult if you feel like a challenge, and that's an important point to remember. Modular difficulty isn't always about making a game easier, but simply providing each player, regardless of skill, the capabilities to choose how they experience the game. When discussing difficulty in gaming, I need to reiterate that this isn't about throwing the gates open to everyone. After all, I can't imagine a die-hard FIFA subscriber or a Fortnite junkie suddenly jumping into Elden Ring because it got a little easier. What modular difficulty does is allow players who want to dive into a new genre of game but are intimidated by the high skill ceiling, or allowing players who no longer have the time to invest to get good. Maybe you have a new job, you've had a baby, or anything in your personal life that prevents you from playing as much as you used to. But my number one reason for flag waving is accessibility, allowing gamers living with disabilities that limit their capability to tackle games in the Soulsborne genre. I'm not saying games need to be easier for differently abled individuals to play. What I'm saying is that certain people simply may not be able to progress through the game without difficulty options allowing some reprieve. Inclusivity. That's a dangerous word in gaming. Instantly gatekeeping purists everywhere envision their favorite games being invaded by casuals. But for me, inclusivity simply means allowing all people, differently abled or not, to enjoy the video games they want to enjoy. But the real question is, how do you make it fair for all players? How would you compensate those who can be the nastiest of FromSoft bosses with a character in their undies versus those who need some guidance? I've come up with two options. The first, changing the difficulty blocks achievements or certain achievements available to that player. If you want the platinum, great, time to start a new game. Think of it as reverse nightmare mode. Once you select easy, you're locked in. I firmly believe that if I'm playing the game the way it was meant to be played, versus someone who has enemy aggression turned down to 0 and player damage turned up to 11, then they shouldn't get the same recognition as myself. Obviously, blocking achievements would be a big undertaking, so stopping modular difficulty players from accessing certain areas tied to those achievements would be another way. Option number 2, blocking areas or even certain weapons or items from modular difficulty players. Similar to certain quest items becoming unavailable based on player choice, depending on the difficulty the player chooses, areas, NPCs, or weapons could become unavailable too. Maybe online play is blocked or summons completely removed. If you want the full, unfiltered experience, time to start a new run. You could even lock modular difficulty to an optional DLC, so those seeking a pure experience won't feel tainted should their favorite series allow some players to have an easier time. The counter-argument to both these options is that by dumbing down the experience, we run the risk of patronizing those who are differently abled if our endgame truly is inclusivity. I firmly believe that video games can be considered art, but not all. The yearly Call of Duty or Madden or FIFA games are less art more than they are whale bait. But Soulsborns are at least some Soulsborns. A carefully constructed world woven together by subtle storytelling, a world that's mysterious yet enticing. Difficulty is at its very core, with challenge being a fundamental principle of the game's design. The player is meant to struggle against forces unknown and rise above. Removing that challenge would strip away the very core, its identity, leaving it a shallow husk, just another generic third-person action game. Modular difficulty works for narrative-driven games because difficulty is supplement to a larger twisting story, the story being the driving force. The upcoming Dragon Age The Veilguard has announced the game will feature modular difficulty, so players can take it easy and enjoy the story, or put their skills to the test and add a new layer to the narrative. At the very start of the video I referenced Team Ninja, developers of Nioh 2 amongst many others. Now Nioh 2 happens to be one of my favorite games, and Team Ninja tackled the question of difficulty by allowing the player to summon other player characters into their games to help out. Not just bosses, but entire missions. You could also tackle missions with up to 3 players in real time, a wonderful feature that helps struggling players without compromising design philosophy. There's no real easy answer, if there truly is an answer to the question of difficulty surrounding Soulsborne or any game for that matter. If we were to see modular difficulty become the industry standard, it would change the very landscape on how we see some games developed, with the inevitable outcome of every game playing like the same homogeneous mess. With all that said, allowing all people, regardless of physical or mental differences, should be the focus. With the rise and prominence of accessibility options coming a long way, with many more evolutions on the horizon. Tell me what you think. Are you a fan of modular difficulty? Should it become the standard, or do you think we should just leave these games alone? Thank you so much for watching. It truly means a lot to me. Like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but please take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.